All right, welcome back. We are WEBD6201 in the winter 2020 semester at Durham, and it's week 6, part 2 of our broadcast. We're talking about more jQuery and forms, which I want to cover more today. So a couple of things we're going to do. I'm going to get out of this. A couple of things we're going to do is up on DC Connect, I've shared a couple of links with you guys now. So one of them is this app CSS gist. So for the people who are remote, please go there. And if you go there, you'll see that it is literally a CSS page that I've shared with you, app.css. A couple ways you can do that. You can just download it and then unzip it. That takes a long time. Or you can go to raw. And if you go to raw, you can kind of Control A, so select all, Control C, copy, and then, when we go into our project from yesterday, so let's open up our project. So we were WebD6201 and we're working with lesson 6 from yesterday. And I want to grab this project and open it up with VS Code again. Let's do that. So I got it in my clipboard right now. That stuff. Okay, so what I want to do here is inside of my app.css, which is in my content folder. Now it's empty. I want to just paste that stuff in. So I just did a couple of changes. One thing that I kind of made a mistake on was the login input. Let's put that into 100%, if you guys don't mind, right? Because I was just checking some stuff out. Again, all I've done is I've gone up on this gist. And a gist is kind of like a little repo on GitHub, but I can share one file at a time. That's what it's for. Actually, it does revisions, the whole thing. I can update it, add stuff. Like, for example, if I wanted everyone to have that change right now, which is I wanted that width to be 100%, I could literally just go in here. I want to edit this. I can click Edit, and I can go down into that area and change this from 80 to 100%. And I can update this gist, and now when you guys go in there, it'll be 100%, right? You can also see that there's 2 revisions now, so this is pretty cool. So sharing files with friends, pretty cool to do, and this is a better way of doing it than using Google Drive for Discord yet. So really cool. I've got a couple of them up there, so I want you to grab that. And there's also a login HTML and a register HTML. Let's make those pages first. That's how I choose to do it. You could also just download it and just drag and drop if you want to. But I'm going to just make those 2 pages. So I'm going to say that, let's click over here. So I'm going to make a login.html page. So far it's blank. I'm also going to make a register.html page. And there it is. So 2 pages that I've kind of created. So my login.html page, if I go to my login.html gist, again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to grab that raw file, Control A, copy, and then go back here and then paste. And I've got my login HTML. I just copy paste it, right? And same thing with register, same process. So I'm going to go back here. So here I am again. So I'm going to click on the register gist, go here, go raw, Control A to select all, Control C to copy everything, switch back to register.html, and Control V to paste. And now I've got register pages and a login page. Okay, so that covers those 2 things. Let's launch our site and see what we've got. So again, Control backtick. I'm going to do light-server for a second. And then I'll put this up on GitHub really quickly. So people who are out there, if you really just don't want to do that and just wait till it's up on GitHub, you can do that too. But I want to show you this idea of gists. You're going to need this structure for your lab 2. I'm kind of prepping you for lab 2. And I'm going to get you guys to use WebD6201 lesson 6 is what it should be, not lesson 5. We'll fix this in a second. Okay, so that's the site, but notice that there is no link. I need to make that link on all the pages. Now this is the bad thing. So whenever, right now, the way our state of the nation kind of thing with our site is, I want to add a page, I've got to go through each page and add a link. That is inefficient. And when we get to Ajax, which is going to happen next week, right? And as stated earlier, like yesterday, we're not going to do our, thanks Alienware, no thank you. We're not going to do our test next week. We'll do it, when we come back from break. But when we do Ajax, we'll have an opportunity to live load, like change some of this stuff up here so that it allows us to load up our nav bar as a separate component, and then our bottom nav as a separate component, and then inject our content separately. And then the great thing about that is you have a page, and this is without any kind of front-end framework, where you have control, just like you would do an include on PHP, right? You want to include different parts, right? Here is it's kind of the same thing we're going to do with Ajax. We're going to get to that next week. And these guys are trying to scan my system. I'll let them do it. All right, so that means that if I go back here, I have to make links. And luckily, what I've done for you is if you go into the login page that I made, as an example, and if I go to my nav bar, I already have a login link. Let's just grab this login link right here. So copy this whole link. And I'm just going to inject it into my index.html and all the other pages. So this is kind of a manual process. You have to go here to index.html. And like we said, is just put it in. We could also do this with JavaScript, but that is really overkill, in my opinion. I mean, injecting a whole link in real life, if you want to do it temporarily because you want to log out, that's something we can do for sure. Right? We can mock a login, which is something we can try and do today, given time. But in an actual fact, to inject a link like we did on, a human resources link, the only reason why we do that is if we're physically logged in. Like, for example, if you're logged in and you have access, then add in a human resources link, add in a private area, add in a bunch of stuff, links that aren't available right now, kind of thing. Again, I'm just going to go back to all these areas. So if you just take the time, obviously it's a bit of manual process, and I'm just going to inject these links in here. There we go. I'm only putting the login link. There's not going to be a register link. The only way you can get to register is from the login page, right? So we'll talk about that in a bit, and then we'll see how that goes. All right, so I think I covered everything, even the projects page, which there's no link for right now.
Your About Us page is listing the contact us.
Is it?
Never mind.
Or was it you? Is it you?
That's fine.
All right.
Do you need it for services?
Yeah, I sure did. Did I miss it? Maybe. Maybe I did. I missed it. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you need it for all the pages, right? Every page should have that login link, right? So if you're logged in. All right, so how does this work then? So if I go back to my site, you can see I have a login link. If I click on login, then you get to this little login. It's trying to figure who I am, right? So I got some defaults in there. And then I would try and log in, and if everything goes well, it's going to log me in, right? However, if I don't have an account, I can register, and it says register here, a little link on the bottom, which takes me to my register page, right? So part of your lab 2 is going to be, okay, I want to confirm that the passwords match. That's going to come for lab 2. So confirm passwords matching. That's one of the things I'm going to get you guys to do. And there's a bunch of other stuff. One thing that I've messed up is it shouldn't say login, it should say register. So let's modify that. I'll modify it actually on the gist as well. So people who are downloading this later on, it'll say the right thing. Again, I'm going to go up here and go edit. You guys can change it manually now. And I'm just going to go back down to the submit where it says login, and it's going to just say register. So you guys can register. There it is. Excellent. Okay, and I'm just going to change that here locally because I realized that the register page is not 100% correct, which is totally fine. So I should say register. Excellente. And that's just your prep for lab 2. So I wanted to give you that because that's where I'm going to get you guys to look at. Your site should have all this structure, and if you just followed what I just did right now, then you're going to get marks for free. Right? The reason why I do this again is because it makes my marking easier. There's some people in the past that have made their own stuff and handed it in, and then I'll take that. But if it's missing things, I mean, I have to be fair to everybody else. So that's why I'm doing this, prepping you guys for what you need. Let's go back and check it out and make sure that it's all there. So again, I'm going to go back to here. So if you notice, it says register now. And if I already have an account, I can go back to log in. You can see that it goes back to log in, right? A couple things we need to do is, which I realized as I was going through this thing, is each of the titles should be different according to the page that we're on. And we don't have that right now. If I go to home, it says WEBD6201 lesson 5. Products is the same thing. And I don't want that. I want each of the pages to say what it is, right? So it should say like WEBD6201 home, you know, WEBD6201 products, and so on. So let's do that. So that's just, again, some minor stuff we want to do. I could make, now that's something we could do with JavaScript. Let's do that with JavaScript, because you know, this is a JavaScript course. So I've got some defaults up there, and what I want to do is, using JavaScript, let's do this again. I'm just going to close all this stuff up. I'm going to go to my app.js, and we have this kind of like, we're creating almost like a lobby or a scene switcher, which is what this is, or a page switcher. And I want to go through here, and when it goes to the index page, or when it goes to the products or services or about or contact or whatever, I want to change the title attribute, okay? So that's title. So if I go down here, you can see that, let's do it on the home page first. So I want to change the title. So let's try document.title, right? And we can change that to WEBD6201, right? And then dash home. And let's see if that does it for our home page. So if I kind of do this, save, and go back out and go to the home page, then it should say home. See that? So we've actually modified that with just by this one thing, document.title. Document is really powerful. It has a lot of stuff that you can access. And sometimes it's very easy. The other harder way, you could do this the easy way, like this, or you could do it the hard way. Here's the hard way to do it. So if I go into my index.html page as an example, so remember that from an HTML structure perspective, if you look up, you know, our title is right here, so that's inside the head. But who cares? Remember that this page is a page. I can modify stuff in the head too, right? Whatever I want in here. I can change links. I have control of meta tags. Everything I want to do, I can do with JavaScript. But be careful. If somehow you have a CSS or something up here that you need linked, and if you wipe it out, take away this link or whatever, I mean, it'll work. It just may not give you the styling and everything you want. So we could go and say, go to the head, and inside the head, so get a reference to the head element, right? For all, you know, document.getElements by tag name head, or document.getElements by tag name title, right? The title element, go there and modify the title's text content or whatever. So this is how it would look. So I want to modify it manually. And let's just try this on the JavaScript side. So let's suppose I want to do this for the products page. So I want to do it the hard way. So I could say document.getElements by tag name, and then open up the tag name and say title. There's the title tag, right? So I want only the first element. There might be more than one title element, I guess, right? And then I can just literally say, like, you know, text content is equal to whatever I want, which is WEBD6201, and then products. So you could do it the hard way. This is the hard way to do it, right? You can see, like, I'm actually getting the title like element and modifying the title to whatever I want. And if I go back to products, then you can see that that is changed up here as well, right? Products. So that's another way of doing it. That's like messing with the head area. You can totally mess with anything on the page at all, even inside the head. People don't know that. You can style the head. You can make the head visible. Right now it's invisible, right? That whole block is invisible, but you can make it visible. It's just a block. It's just HTML, if you think about this, right? It's crazy, and it doesn't make any sense that you do that, but so this is definitely something you can do. We're not going to do it this way. We're going to just replace all this with title, right? That's like literally how you could do it, and that's totally fine to do. I'm just going to do that for all of them. So when I switch, I want to switch the title. And that's a valid use of you know, the code, because maybe I'm going to have multiple pages, and I want to add a template page as an example, and I want to you know, change everything here in code as opposed to change it with you know, So we say about us. You can be as creative as you like here, right? But at the end of the day, this is contact us. Contact us. And the reason why the title is so important is because when you share links, you can go there, and it's one of the things that Google likes to find. Okay, and this is projects. One thing we don't have is the register page and login page, because we don't have those page in the scenes in the switcher right now. We don't have that. So if I want to modify pages, and I'm going to do this now to help you, so that you can do your lab. This is all part of lab 2 prep right now. So again, I can go index, products, services, about, contact, projects, and let's go into case login. What about if it's the login page? Then I want to do something. And this is on page name, right? Whatever the page name is, login, and then I can, kind of go in there, and I want to display the login content. I don't have that yet, but I want to display this. Maybe there's going to be some stuff that I want to do, and I can put that at the bottom. So let's just make another function. So way underneath all this other stuff. Look at the bottom. So here's display projects. We'll display, so we'll say function display login content. So we might have some stuff in there that's specific to my login page. You'll need this for your lab, right? Hey, while we're down here, let's do some stuff for the display register content. We don't have that yet. We don't have register content, but we will. And again, if you're on the register page, I'm just going to go back up to the little lobby that I got here, the switcher, and I'll add another case. I'll say case register, and then we'll display the register. There we go. All right. Okay, so that kind of handles that. We've added those 2 pages to our content. Now you can see this is quite tedious, right? Because every one of this, we're talking about optimization here. Imagine if I had 50 pages to 100 pages to 100 pages. Imagine if I had to do this. That doesn't make any sense. And so there's other ways of detecting stuff on the page. This is just the easiest way to display stuff for you, right? What I mean by that is I don't want to create structures where right now, until we get to Ajax, it doesn't make any sense for me to make a bunch of structures, but we're going to change in Ajax for all the pages that we want. Okay, so this is all these different pages, and the register page, the login page, and all that stuff. One thing we have to make sure we do when we go to the login page is let's make sure that the register page says register as well. So if I click register right now, it just says login. That doesn't make any sense. Let's override that. So again, going back down to this stuff down here. So I'm going to grab this title from one of these, and then go all the way down to those 2 areas, and then just say when I'm, in the login page, change this to login. Oops. And change this to register. So again, now I have some consistency in my title naming, right? So you can see that says register now. And if I go back to login, it'll say login. So you see all that stuff. Nice, right? And this, this login stuff, it's kind of boilerplate stuff, template stuff that you can find anywhere. I just kind of, made something that's pretty standard. Not 100% happy with the background color or this. And the reason why this is blue, and if I try to do this with incognito mode, so if I went to incognito window, so there's my new window, and let's look at that and see what it looks like there. So I'm going to say localhost 3000. You can see that now it's incognito. If we go to login, it's going to be white, right? The reason why it's blue is because I've been there before, right? So that's what it should look like when you see it, like this, okay? And that's what you're going to see on your Lab 2 document. It's going to say, I need pages that look like this for 1 mark. You guys got your marks right there just by being in class today, right? And by following along, right, with the video. All right, this is great. So I've got a base for your Lab 2, and I might ask you to remove stuff or whatever. Let's get rid of it. So I'm going to go back to here to Visual Studio Code, and I want to put this up on GitHub. So again, whenever I made these changes, like I modified all these pages, added stuff, modified app.css, app.js. There's a lot of changes. This is a great place to put it up on GitHub. So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna say something like added login and register pages. Okay, so we're just gonna click on this little checkbox and then push. There we go. All right, so I want to point some stuff out. Let me just inspect some of the things I did to make this page look the way it does, okay? Just really high level. I'm not going to go into this too much because it's not part of our course, but let's talk about it anyway, briefly. App.css. So what I did was I said, let's make something called an input group add-on. And the input group add-on is going to have a different style. So if you notice, on those 2 pages only on login.html, you'll notice that there is for the form, I'm just looking at the form here for a second. And so here's the container, and take a look at this form. The class for this whole area, this content area, is called login. So I've replaced the Jumbotron. I don't have a Jumbotron for those 2 areas. I have something called login, right? Now, maybe it would have been better to call it login/register or whatever, login register, right? But basically, this is a new style that is going to be hit by this app.css. So login. So whenever you see login, it's going to affect things like the padding and how it looks in the background, the input, how big the input is, and so on, and if it's what the border radius is for all this stuff, whatever. That's one part. The other part we've added is input group add-on. That's another one. So if you look, if I go back to my login page, you can see that there's something called input group add-on, which is a span that goes right here. And this input group add-on does this special effect when I go back to the page that adds a little box around my my font awesome icon, right? That's what it does. And then that's all it does. It kind of makes it so it appears right in here and makes it look like a little, little man to log in and a little lock for your password. If you try typing stuff in, so if I type in like, John, at example.com, right? And if I go to your password and you type in password, you can see that it's going to be just a password, so it'll save it. It'll hide it. And if I haven't registered, if I go to register here, right, then it'll do the same thing. I can start typing. When I start typing my password and my confirmed password, there'll be stuff in there that you need to do. Okay, so that's the forms that I've created for your lab 2. Watch out for that. Stay tuned. I'm almost there. I just want to make sure that it's reasonable and fair, and it gives you a bit of a challenge, just so that you're prepared for the test that's coming up. Not next week, but the time we get back. Okay, so that's what's happening there. Any questions around this stuff? So just register and login page. We're going to use these register and login pages pretty much for this second half of semester, because we're actually going to do a login and register. We're actually going to perform this login and registration stuff, right? So right now they're just mock-ups. They're just going to be used as, a ways of doing this. All right, so imagine if I log in, and if I click the login page, and here's something that you want to try. I want to log in, and when I'm logged in, right? I'm logged in. I want to go back somehow. How do I do this? I want to go back to the home page, right? And in my home page, I want to when I'm there, instead of login, it's going to show logout. So I'm going to change my what it says on the link, and I'll actually do something different on the link. So the link will disappear, a new link will appear. A couple ways to do that is we can make the logout link already, add them to all the pages. We can do that, and basically hide that link all the time, right? So when we're logged out, then it doesn't show up, right? But when you're logged in physically, it shows up. The challenge with doing this, if I log in and actually press the login and we can mock it up, the problem with doing this thing on every page is if you actually leave that page and go to the home page, there's no state right now. It won't keep track of state the way we are right now because we don't have no back end. Like really, we're just mocking up the front end. This is all client-side stuff, right? So we don't have anything on the front end that's going to that can detect, our page switching right now because we're not using Ajax. If we were using Ajax, that's a totally different thing. I can control the way the whole thing looks. I can make it so that I can mock up that we're logged in. It'll keep track of stuff. Because really, what we want to do, and I want you to think about this now, right now we physically have multiple pages, real multiple pages. But why do we have to have multiple pages? We don't. What we can do instead is use a single page application, or it's also called a SPA. Seriously, right? SPA, right? So a single page application, what the single page application will do is it will literally just load content in different areas. So if I click on a link, I'm not really clicking on a link. I'm not really going to another page. I'm actually on the same page, right? But what's actually happening is I'm just changing up the content dynamically, right? So it looks like it's another page, but actually it's the same page, right? So in that case, if I log in, I can mock up what it looks like to log in and log out, and we're going to do that when we hit Ajax.
Does that load much faster than loading multiple pages?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no load time.
Is there the initial load time longer because of technically?
Nope.
No?
No, well, actually, just the first time you cache might be a little longer,
Yeah.
but the great thing about this is, again, you have this dynamic content that sits there, and I can swap out the nav bar, I can swap out the bottom, I can swap out the middle, I can swap out different pieces. It's almost like I can inject components into the page. And by the way, this is what these big frameworks are doing. So big frameworks like Angular. Let's go talk about Angular a second. And we'll talk about this again, but if you go to Angular, this is a project that is very popular as a front end. So we want to talk about client-side scripting a little bit. Originally powered by Jquery, all right, back in the day. Eventually went into a full component-based model. This is super powered, application framework, I would say. If you guys learn Angular, it's one of the main frameworks. There's I would say 3 big frameworks right now that are out there that are very popular. I'm not sure if this one's now more popular. It changes every year, or this one, which is React. So I want to talk about these just for a second. So if I go to React.js, so reactjs.org. Now, let's talk about this just a sec. And one more is Vue. So if I go to Vue.js. So here's Vue.js. So all 3 of them are JavaScript frameworks. So there's Angular, there's React, and there's Vue, those 3. And one of the things is they use this approach where we have components. So instead of me having one massive page, as an example, multiple pages, and I go from one page to the other, I don't do that. With Angular or React, or even with Vue, I'm using this idea of a single page application. So the single page itself gets reloaded, it gets loaded up. These are great frameworks, and it's one part of this mean stack that we talked about before earlier. Remember the mean stack, Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node? This is Angular. Angular is a topic that could fill up an entire semester and a half, okay? Like that's how much there is in terms of how to learn Angular. It does everything from create, not just creating pages, but how it works in terms of its robustness. If you're a developer, this framework is for you. It's a framework for developers. That's what it is. One thing to note is it's very complex. So when we use Angular compared to, let's say, other frameworks like React, Angular, by the way, I want to talk about, is made by Google and Microsoft. Google and Microsoft came together to make Angular, right? That's what it was worked on. And this is why Angular uses TypeScript, like we've been talking about this whole time, right? So TypeScript is not something that I just like just because, right? I mean, you learn TypeScript and you know how to do Angular better, and I think it's really something that you guys should learn at some point if you're interested in being a web developer. React is made by Facebook, actually. Facebook doesn't make a lot of stuff, right? But React is one of their true success stories. So it's from these awesome developers at Facebook. They've come up with an easier framework than Angular to learn. It's truly component-based, where you inject the HTML onto the page. Both use something called a shadow DOM, right? So you have a document object model, but they actually keep it in memory. And every time you update it, they actually like update the entire page and send it to the, actually update the page that way. It's really quite interesting. So they have a render function in React that actually renders any one of those components. It's kind of really interesting. And then you can see that here they use classes. By the way, both frameworks, Angular and React, both use ES6 and beyond class. That's stuff that we've been doing so far. All right, so that's kind of the stuff that is interesting. I think right now, if I'm not wrong, I would say React is slightly more popular in terms of a front-end framework than Angular at this point in time. So really quite interesting the way they do things. As you can see, it's all JavaScript. It's a full JavaScript framework. There isn't any anything else, and this is why it's so popular. It's JavaScript everywhere. So the two stacks we're talking about is mean stack, Mongo, which is MongoDB. Let me just talk about this. Again, this is a little bit ahead of time, so MongoDB. So MongoDB, and we're going to get there. MongoDB is a JavaScript database. Okay, that's what it is. Let's just put this, instead of MongoDB Atlas, let's just go to mongodb.com for a second. Yeah, there's MongoDB. So mongodb.com, and if you go there, so this is your back-end JavaScript database. Again, you can see all the people who use it. I would say some small companies, that you've seen here before, right? Like, for example, Facebook and EA and a bunch of other ones. So really, and why? It's a NoSQL database, so it doesn't use structured query language at all, right? It actually uses JSON data. Remember we talked about JSON, creating that JavaScript object notation or JavaScript object. So MongoDB does that on the back end. So again, Mongo, Angular. We're going to learn Express later on this semester. It's called, if you go to Express.js, so here's Express, and it works great with Node. And I like the what it says here, which is unopinionated. I really like this. And this is kind of middleware for us. So we already know what Node is. We already got Node. Node is the thing we've been running all semester in the background. We've been running Node when we write Light Server. We're running Node when we use Yarn. When we're running Node when we use NPM. Any of those things, we've been doing Node this whole time on the back end. So Node is your back end server, right? And it provides an actual server. It listens for input. You can use it to mess with the operating system. You can do all kinds of stuff with Node. But on top of that, a layer on top of Node is Express. And what Express does is it literally creates an API, which is an API that we can tap into. We create access points or entry points. For example, I want to go to my login page. So the way it routes from one page to the other, right now it seems to be automatic for us, right? But actually Express can control the routing of all the pages across the backend framework. This is a replacement for PHP in some ways, right? So we talked about PHP being the backend, then Apache being your Node.js equivalent, right? So again, the AMP stack, Apache, MySQL instead of Mongo, and PHP. That's the standard AMP stack. And this is Mongo, Express, Angular, and then Node, right? And that's the mean stack. Mongo, Express, Angular, Node, right? And then the MERN stack, you just replace Angular with React, right? MERN stack, Mongo, Express, React, and Node, right? And very two popular frameworks. Again, I have a feeling that React now at this point is more popular than Angular just because of its ease of use and the fact that it also has great other projects for cross-platform development, and there's something called React Native that is huge with the mobile development community, because what you can do with React Native, again, it's an offshoot of React, using JavaScript and all kinds of HTML technology, like regular HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript, to create mobile applications, right? So you want to make an iOS application without knowing anything about Swift. You want to make an Android application without knowing Java. React Native, right? You can do it with web technologies, right? It's really, really cool. So this is why I think the whole React ecosystem might be a little bit more popular at this point. But we digress. Let's get back to what we're doing. So what I'm saying is the reason why I went here at all is because of this, because of the fact that we have to continuously change every link that we've been doing. And back in the day, that's how it was done. There was no front-end framework. It was all multiple pages, right? Not anymore. Nowadays, it's all done, for the most part, any greenfield kind of projects, that means new projects, are all done with some kind of front-end framework, whether it's Angular, React, or Vue. Okay, and Vue is kind of the new kid on the block. It does things even easier. And there's one more I got to talk about, which is up and coming. It's called Svelte, right? So if you look at Svelte, this is the other one that's really, really popular nowadays, Svelte. And it's yet another framework which does, here, they actually talk about making Svelte a really, truly quick way of writing a front end with no virtual DOM. So they've figured out ways of not even using a shadow DOM at all, and they use just vanilla JS, which is pretty crazy. So Svelte, definitely something to watch as an up-and-comer in this whole framework chase that's happening. So again, I would say those are the 4 that I know that are really, really popular. There's a bunch of other ones, older ones that were out there in the past, and they've kind of become less popular nowadays. Okay? Any questions around this? Angular Express, Angular Node? We're going to learn about this, coming up in the second half of semester, right, where we actually build our own mean application. One thing I want to do with you guys that's kind of slightly off book, and I want to talk about this, is do pure CRUD with Mongo, Express, and Node. So that means like create, read, update, delete operations, all with that stuff. You know how to do that, you're one step closer to being a full stack developer, what we call full stack these days. And there's lots of jobs out there for full stack developers, tons and tons. Okay, we'll get back to this. So far we're learning how to walk right now. Soon we're going to run. And then eventually with the full stack we'll fly. All right, so again, multiple pages here that we've been using, and what I want to do is to try this out. So imagine if, for now, and this is not part of your lab, but imagine if when we click the login button, I want to hijack the login, right? So instead of my login, which is a submit button, that's what it is, right? Again, this is just going on. I want to hijack the submit button here, and remember what I mean by hijack? E.prevent default, which prevents default behavior for the form, right? When I click login, and if everything's correct, it doesn't matter what the user puts in, we just accept the fact that he logged in correctly. We're not doing any kind of checking right now, right? But what we want to do is we want to have this additional link that we don't have here that says log out, right? Okay, so let's make the link first. I'm going to put this on only on this page because there's no point putting it on every other page, because the only page that's going to be able to use it right now is just this one, right? So copy this whole thing. And we're going to mock it up so it looks like it's like you've logged in. We're going to put in log out. Okay. And what we want to do is for a Font Awesome class, FA sign out, I believe, is what the alt is. If I just do this right now, the way it is, and let's call this log out so we can tap into it. And if I go back to that page, then you can see that if I go back to the login page, I'm going to see this log out page as well as log in. Okay, I don't want that. Okay, I don't want this. I want log out to appear only when we're logged in, right? And I want to hide login when we've done the login part. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So log out should always be hidden until we log in properly, and then it's shown. Okay, pretty simple, right? The log out button is going to take us back to log in, right? It's going to take us back there. So it's going to go back here and refresh the page, if you will. All right, that's what it'll do. So let's make the log out button hidden by default. Okay, a couple ways to do this. We can make it so that it's using JavaScript and it's always, kind of out. Or for now, we can make it so that it uses CSS. Let's just use CSS for now because we're mocking it up. We're not really doing that. So I'm going to go back to my CSS page here. And whenever I target an, kind of an ID of log out, I want to say display none. All right, so there's not going to be a display at all. Okay, if that makes sense. Now we got to be careful here. I want to bring this back, and I want to use jQuery to do that, right? So if I go back to my page now, you can see that even though the logout link is there, login is there, but logout is not showing, and that's how it should work. When I actually enter my login information, it will replace login with logout. Okay, let's do that. So how do we do this kind of stuff? This is just a warm-up for us for today. So again, if you go to the login content, right, I want to tap into the same kind of thing. So remember, I'm tapping into the submit button. We can copy some of the stuff that we did already, which is this part right here. We want to, we're going to access the logout form or login form, and let's see if we called it that. So again, on the page, right, you can see if I scroll down, it's called login form. I wonder if I modified my register page. I probably didn't when I was creating it. Probably still says login form. Let's change the login form to register form. I gotta change that gist again. Hold on. I'm sorry. I know I'm going off book here, but I need to, because someone down the line, someone's gonna say, your register page doesn't work properly. I've already made 2 revisions. Let's make another one. So I just want to change that so it says register form. All right, let's go do that. There's my update. All right, so yeah, so let's go back. So I've changed register form. I want to go back to login form though, and this says login form, so I can get there by going to my app.js. And just like I did this submit, I want to kind of have the same structure where I have E here. E is going to be my event. That's what it stands for, E. You can actually replace that with event. E is typical, if you're okay with that. I definitely want to stop propagation and all this. I'm just going to copy this first little part here without the ending curly brace. So I want to just grab this stuff, okay? I'm not going to check for validity right now for my form, but I want to grab this anyway. So I'm going to go back down to the bottom where I have my display login content, put that in, and let's just end the curly brace so that we don't cause an error. And what I want to do right now is when the submit button is pressed, I don't care about this. I just want my prevent. I want to prevent default and prevent propagation. I want to do that, and I want to get rid of this. I also want to clear the form. So I want my contact form to be clear. So I can do that. I can just do the same thing, right? So I can say something like, it's not my contact form right now, it's the login form. So I want my login form to be clear, right? So remember, I want to reset the login form. And we kind of did that. If this is wrong, this reset, we can always look to the clear form app, which does this. It resets the contact form, and then it hides the error message, right? Well, we want to do the same thing. The only thing we've messed up here is the index. So let's go back to that because it shows an error. Right, here's my error. So I want to prevent default, but I want to say that the first instance of the login form I want to reset. Okay? And why do I have not enough curly braces, or did I not close it properly? On submit, I think I need a closing brace. That's what I'm missing there. I need a closing bracket as well. Okay, that will fix the problem. Okay, so that should do it. Let's see if this does. I'll reset the form. So I'm going to go back to my login page. So let's go back to login. Again, I'm using incognito mode, so it doesn't show any other information in here. And I'm going to just refresh the page manually. And if I just type in like John and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and click login, right, then it's going to hijack the page. I'm actually still on the login page. It hasn't reset the page, which sets us up to do this thing, this little switcheroonie that I talked about, okay? It looks like we've logged in, but actually we haven't. So let's go back to this. All right, so when we submit, then what I want to do is with jQuery, make that, I got to do 2 things, right? One thing is I want to hide the login, right? So I want to hide the login, which is, again, if you look at the login.html, let's bring it to the side for a second. I'm just going to take login itself, right, and I want to make this split, right? So let's put login over here. So again, you can move it over here, right? So I can see the login, and the reason why I want to do this is I want to see this stuff, so I can work side by side, which is a good way of working sometimes. I think you can see that I have login. It's got a nav link. The ID is login, so I want to tap into that ID. So again, I want to tap into an ID of login, just login, and I want to hide that element, right? And what I want to do is do the same thing with my log out and show that element. So there's, again, just a warm up. We've done this kind of stuff before where we hide and show. I think those two little methods are probably the most useful methods that jQuery has, hide and show, truly. Makes sense? So I'm going to hide this one when I log in, and I'm going to show this one, log out. Okay. Let's see how that works. So again, we can go, we actually don't have to type anything here because there's no validation. There might be for you. And then John, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Click log in, we should have a log out. Notice that that's not kind of active, right? Because we haven't made the log out active. Even though we're on the login page, it should do this. So do you have the same thing as me?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back. So one thing we can do to prep for this is whenever time the login page is showing, the logout is showing, it should be active alongside anything else, right? So even though we may be on the home page, we want the logout to be always nav item active, like this, right? So we'll just put an active link there for the logout. So again, logging in. If I just press login, you'll just go log out now, right? If I press log out, it'll go back to log in, right? It'll reset back to this page. So log in, it'll show us log out, right? You see it works. And if I press log out, then it just gets rid of log in again. Kind of like a little toggle. And this is how we do it, right? We're going to do this when we use Express. So Express is basically going to do this, plus it's going to show us the user that's logged in. Okay, so there's the next part. Let's see if we can show the user, right, that's logged in. Welcome, John. You know, welcome whatever the name is of the user, right? Hell, we'll make that part of your lab. Haha. All right? So that's going to be something that we're going to add to the lab. So when we log in, we're going to get the name of the user, and it's going to say, when it's successful, it's going to say, welcome, whatever your name is. Okay? It's going to show it up here. And that's going to probably show between the contact us page and the login page, which makes sense, because that's where it would normally appear. Right? Say, welcome, and then log out. You know, that kind of thing. A lot of times these control pages, log in, log out, and register. If I go to my register page, notice again that there isn't a register page kind of mentioned up here, but you can sign in from the register page. And what it would do is it would take you to like a page like the home page or some private area that's not available right now because you're logged out, right? When you log in, it's going to open up additional information that you might not have access to. And we're going to use that when we make our back end. We're going to have some kind of area that's hidden, and then you can't get to it, but when you log in, now all of a sudden it's available for you. Okay? Makes sense? Let's take a look at some special effects. That's what we're talking about today. A few special effects that jQuery can let us do as well. So if I go to jquery.com, I want to talk about some additional things that jQuery can do. So under the API documentation, jQuery has all these functions. We're going to talk about Ajax next week. But it allows us to do a bunch of stuff. Like there's like a ton of things here that you can do. And they've done some, some of the basic functions that we do a lot of with just plain JavaScript. They do a lot of these things here in jQuery where you can get here. You can do a lot of things here much easier than before. And I shared a PowerPoint with you guys last week. I haven't updated the PowerPoint because there's no point. It has everything in it that you might possibly need Let's go in there and see that PowerPoint. Again, that would be under last week's lesson. So again, we're looking at lesson 5 PowerPoint. There isn't one for lesson 6 because we're just using jQuery again this week. So if we look at this, there are a ton of things we can do with jQuery. I'm just going to skip down here. So we talked about useful methods. We talked about the event, an event handler. How to do effects and animations is right here, and this is what we're going to be covering at some point today. And really what we can do is we can fade in and fade out, those kind of things. I can make items fade in and fade out. We can also use something called chaining, which is what we do with effects. So for example, I want to fade to a specific way and fade out, and these are the different methods. We can do show hide, which we've already done, toggle, which displays or hide. When I click on it one time, then it'll allow me to click, make an event that can detect if I've already clicked onto it. Slide down, slide up, fade in, fade out. Those are very popular, fade in and fade out. Fade toggle and fade to. So those are kind of all built into regular jQuery, right? With nothing else. And it gives you examples here in the code on how to do that. So for example, I want to fade out over 5 seconds. As an example, I can do that. I can fade out something over 5 seconds, right? Be careful of some of the links. If you want to do that with links or something else, once you click on that link, you'll never see the effect because it's going to take the default propagation. Default thing means the link. What's the default behavior for on the HTML page? You click a link, it's going to take you somewhere, right? If you want to prevent the default, just like submitting button, you can just say e.prevent default, which will stop you from moving, stop you from propagating, and then you can mess with that. So example, if we had a button on our page, and if I go to my index.html for a second, so let's go in that. I'll just close this down because we've done everything for login for now. Let's go to our index.html page. Here it is. And we have this hero button down here, right? This little button that says, hey, welcome to my site. Click this project button. And then when you click the project button, it'll take you to current projects. All right, let's hijack this button just for testing. And I want to stop the default behavior of this button. So again, I would go back to my app.js. This is on the display like the regular content. That's like one of the first things we did. So if I go up to the switcher, a quick way to doing that is go here, right click, and then go to definition, and then it'll take us to this area here. So this little area here, which displays home content right now, all it does is it allows us to get the button. When the button is clicked, it takes us to this, changes our location to projects.html. It actually adds the link. We're just going to comment this out right now, right? Just because we don't need to. I'm just going to block comment. But what I want to do instead is when I click the button, it's going to fade away. So I'm going to say that when the button is clicked, so again, it's the button that has with an idea of button. If I'm not wrong, I think that's what we called it on the page. Let's just see. Yes, type is button. So we're looking for only that button. So now this is interesting. So this is different than, notice that here when we did this, this is actually looking for an element called every button element. When we click on any button element, right? So let's do that same thing. We'll say any element that's on the page. When we click onto it, what we're going to really do is we're going to, we can do 2 ways. We can have a function. Remember, this is how the JavaScript function works. And the function is going to basically allow us to do this situation. Remember what this is called? Anything that the event handler points to is usually called an event handler or a callback function. Those are the 2 words we use. Callback function or event handler, right? So it's some kind of function that triggers after some kind of input, some kind of event that's raised. So here I'm listening for the click event, and this function is going to trigger. This is the callback function. I can replace this, the function keyword, with fat arrow function, like this. And when the button is clicked, what I want to do is I want to take that same button element, right? This will actually fade out all button elements of the page. All button elements I want to fade out. And notice it says a couple things. The duration, right? So that's the duration, that's one part. And it says that the duration is a string or number determining how long an animation will run. Let's make this fade out long. So let's say 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds. And then easing, that's the next one. So you can see that it's going to give us a little bit of an example down here. If you scroll out, so you can see that you can do a linear. That's the kind of ease. You can do an ease in or ease out, fade in and fade out. There's different kinds of easing that you can use, right? And if you scroll up, it tells you this. It says that this part right here is easing. That's what it does. So we can say that. We'll just use linear again. So linear ease. It's optional anyway. And then when we're complete, what do we want to do? Remember, this is yet another callback function, right? So when we're complete, upon complete, we can do another function. This is kind of cool. So we can actually do something like another callback. So, hey, we're going to fade out. When we're done fading out, let's do something. Well, we're just going to say console log, button faded out. Button faded out. Okay. Let's see if that works. It's on the home page. So if I go back to my index.html page, so we'll go there and to this, and we'll go to home. If I click the button now, it's going to fade. It should fade out over 5 seconds. Take a look. That's a really long fade, right? So you can do that, and then it actually disappears, right? Now look at what it did. It actually also changed our layout when it faded out, right? Now wouldn't it be nice if at the end it faded back in? Well, you can do that. You can say when it's done, let's not make it 5 seconds, it's too long. Well, when it's done, let's just fade it back in for 3 seconds, right? So we can do that. We can say that, let's grab this stuff. I'll put this back in there. You can see that there's a function within a function now. Within a function, we can totally do this. And let's make this function into an arrow function that looks like this, just to be succinct, right? So now, when the fading out is done, fade back in, fade in. So it'll be like a pulse, right? Fade in 1 second. Make it a linear fade, so it's cool. And we won't have a callback function. We won't have this callback function will be non-existent. So it'll just end like this, right? So we can do that. All right, let's check this out and see what that does now. So fade in for 3,000 milliseconds, fade out for 1,000. That's 3 seconds and 1 second. So if I fade out 1 second, and then when it goes back, it'll just fade back in 1 second. So it'll kind of pulse. So you can make things kind of do that kind of thing, or in and out. These are really cool special effects that you can add for like hover over and hover out too, yeah.
If you go back to the code, you use this instead of
Absolutely, yes. I was going to show you that, right? So, because this handles every button again. But I don't want every button. I just wanted the button that was clicked. And instead of button, we don't have to use button. We should use the name of the button or the only button, the first button. So we can actually do something like the first button clicked, right? Because this finds all buttons, which is bad, right? I mean, this is a button, sure, but it finds all buttons. Let's make an ID for that. We have a button called projects button. That's the ID for it. So we should really just do that. So it should be the projects button that's clicked, right? And what we want to do is instead of using button, we can use the keyword this, right? Which does exactly what we want. Now this, okay, now what are you going to use here? Can you use this again? What was that?
base.
Base? You can't use base.
Super.
No, you can't. You got to kind of do the same thing as this, right? So you can use this here, but I'll talk about how this works, okay, in a second. Actually, it should be with quotations on the end. But let's talk about this. There's many ways to handle this. So what's the this keyword do? Well, it looks like the thing that's making this button work. So from here to here, that means the button that was clicked, this button fade out. That's what it means, this button. Let's see if that works. So again, save it. If I click on the button, then it should fade out, right, in 3 seconds. But notice that it doesn't fade out. Just saying, right? Why? Because we're using fat arrow functions. If I turn this back into a function, like this, right? So if I did this instead, let's see how this might work better. So again, if I turn this on, yeah. Yeah, so again, we get some really funky effects here. I'm just gonna undo those changes. But what we really want is this part here. This is specific. Ooh, I know why. I've had an error here the whole time, maybe. We want specific effects. But yeah, you should be able to do this in there.
You need to pass the object that's not into the function.
Oh, in here.
Yeah.
Like this object, you mean? Or this? Or the keyword this?
Yeah. Pass the not into the function.
I mean, I could, right?
And then you'd be able to call this.
Then I could call this. You're saying explicit, you know, pass in explicit this.
Yeah. And
To
then
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, object this dot fade out. Yeah, you could. However, my fade out's not working anymore because of my changes. Let's make sure that this is okay. So save that and click onto it. Stick.
Not working either.
Yeah, I probably broke it. Right, so let me go back. It's because I did all those funky changes, right? So let me just do that. Put that back. Projects button. Did I call it projects button or project button? Projects button. Yeah.
It works with button.
Yeah, let me just make sure it gets there, right? Because I want to see that console log clicked. Again, sometimes weird stuff happens, right? So maybe on the display homepage content, something's not right when I'm clicking on that button. Let's see. Let's refresh too. Let's see, did it do it? Okay, this is what I was looking for. It says, on content, invalid destructing assignment target. App 27. Maybe I'm missing a curly brace? That's usually what it means. Well, let's just get rid of this for a second. I'll come back to this in a second. I go, take this, get rid of that. Because that should definitely work. Click on this. We can say clicked. Again, if I can't do this, oh, I know why. That would be the case, right? Yes. Okay, so that's the reason why. It's that little hashtag because we're trying to click on that area there. So let's go back and just undo that stuff because I know what the problem is now. I can just put the hashtag back in. And that's probably what caused that whole error to happen. I didn't notice. Okay, fade out. Let's use this now just to appease our senses. I was like, wait, that totally should work, right? All right, sensibilities. We don't care about this clicked anymore. We know it's going to get there, and no. Projects button. This doesn't like that. That is for sure. Nope, doesn't like that. This keyword, that's for sure. It's okay with that though. So let's try this. Okay, doesn't work, but at least doesn't cause an error. All right, so let's go back to this for a second. So again, if it doesn't work with this, then it won't work.
Does this need to be inside the jQuery CDN?
Yeah, no, it's gonna be. I think it's or jQuery dot this. Let's see. Let's see. It's close. We're close. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. So it definitely works. The fade in, fade out. Let's just try jQuery dot this. So hey jQuery dot. Oh, see, this doesn't work. HTML parameter jQuery this. It gives me information about it. myForm elements.hide. Let's look it up. I wasn't going to do this today, but hey, you asked. jQuery this. jQuery jQuery this does not do what I want it to do. I'm getting Katy Perry all over the place. No, that's not what we want. jQuery, that's so funny. jQuery this selector. Yes, see, that wasn't wrong with the way it was. Just a matter of how it works. Class name on click events, and then this.height. Yeah, that's what we were trying to do. And it does not run DOM. That's on this hide. Okay, well let's try that. Let's say that we'll just hide it. How about that? And then if that works, and I think it might be this part. Let me see that. Event, no, it even uses fat arrow function, so that totally should work. And it's not passing in, oh no, it is passing in event, but that doesn't really matter. That's just accessing E, right? That's all that is, E, event, call it whatever you want. And if we comment this out for a second, just a second, we should have the same effect that they're talking about. We'll toggle this on, save, go back, and go back to our page. Yeah, so it's not working. So this keyword, booah. Projects button, click. And what if I just don't use the fat arrow function? Sorry, sometimes that fat arrow function is good and sometimes it's not good. And also, we can also print out this, see what it is, what it's pointing to, right? So, yeah, see, that totally works. So I told you, the fat arrow function. So the fat arrow function, let me talk about this, why it didn't work. So the fat arrow function is, it passes the context for this from the outer function. So this with the fat arrow function means this, the display home content context, this one. That's what this means. If I pass, because I'm using a fat arrow function, let me show you that again. So if I change this back to fat arrow function, which is this, no pun intended, right? Like this, it won't work because I'm using fat arrow notation. Fat arrow notation, remember, it propagates this context from the previous function, right? So this is great, but if I click onto this, it doesn't know what to do, right? And to show you that, if I said I want to show you what this is, I can do a console log. And if I just go this, so I want to get access to this, I want to print out this. So show me this. What is this? And this is when the button's clicked. This is the only time I'm going to get this. I'm going to go inspect. So I click on the button, and then you can see that it's getting what it's showing, right? It says, okay, this context is the window object. That's how far back it's going because of the fat arrow function uses the context. This, right? Different kind of thing. And if I look at the window, it's the entire window object. That's what this thing is. Look, if I hover over it, it means this whole window is what's happening, right? This whole window. That's what this is. However, if I go back and change the fat arrow function from the fat arrow function back to traditional function keyword, and I press save, and I go back and click onto it, now we get something else. That's a different context, right? And this is what I was thinking it was. It was this. It looks at the primary button. That works, right? And if that button was on its own and it wasn't inside of an iffy, no problem. It would work okay. But because it's an iffy that this, it kind of does really weird kind of context assignment or binding, a different kind of binding. Okay, so yeah, so this would totally work. We could use this keyword for that. And I could, knowing this, leaving the function the way it is. So if you wanted to do what you're asking, then what you could do instead is you could, let's uncomment this block. We could just go in here and change this part here to this. Okay? Now question, if I did this once, can I do it again? Well, because I'm using the fat arrow function, we should point to this. Let's see if it works. Let's see if we're right. So click onto it, it fades away and comes back, right? Okay, cool. So that did this thing. What if I'd made this this as well? what does this point to if I'm using fat arrow function in here? Let's see. I want to see, right? So because now this is not propagating the same way, right? So fade in. Does it actually fade in again, or just will it keep it faded out? So fade out, and does it fade back in? Yeah, it does. Because of this. That's the block. That's the guard, right? It goes back to the last function, right? Otherwise, it'll skip all that stuff and go back up to the iffy, right? Make sense?
Is there an equivalent to this when you use other functions for the function that just called it?
Yes. Yes, you can. You have to not propagate, though. There's a way of turning off the context. There's a way of doing it. Yeah, for sure. There's always a way. Yeah.
What's the point of passing e in the function?
No point,
Okay.
right? Yeah, unless we want to stop propagation. So if I want to stop propagation, then when I press the button, yeah, then I can do something like I want to stop the propagation. I don't want to go to my link, right? For whatever reason. So notice how I had this. I can say that e dot, prevent default behavior, right? And I can say e dot stop propagation, right? I can do those two things again, so it'll stop me from moving on. Prevent default behavior. It won't actually do anything, right? So the normal behavior would be if I had a link somehow, right? Great thing is about Bootstrap, even if it's not a button and you style it as a button, it'll look like a button. And there's different reasons for this. Let me explain, right? So if I go back to index.html, right now it's coded as a button. It's a button element, and it's also a button here, but there's no href tag on a button. There just isn't, right? So here, this allows us to use JavaScript to inject, control stuff a little bit more. However, if this was an anchor tag, it could still look like a button if you just wrapped it with this class. It would still look like a button. The same button. It would look like a blue button, because that's what primary button is. All right, so let's say if I did prevent propagation, if I clicked onto this, it's still going to do the effect. That's the effect, fade in and fade out. Okay, so that's what we did there. So we don't really need these, yeah. So Spencer's right. You don't need that stuff. Because we're not doing anything. We're not making it go to projects. So let's suppose I want to, here's something we can do. I want to wait, right? I want to fade in, fade out, and then I want to go fade out, fade in, and then go here, right? So this what I want to do this after, only after I do this. Well, then you'd have another event. When this is done, right? And only when this is done, when it fades back out, my other event will be go to the location, finally, right? So what this will do is, there's, again, I'm using kind of this one way of doing it. Fade out, fade in, and when it's done fading in, then go to projects. Now linear is only one type of thing. We'll take a look at, there's different kinds of easing functions, right? We'll go back to those and check them out in a second. But let's see how this works. Again, it should take us to our projects page. Okay, so if I go back to this, and if I click onto it now, it'll fade in, or fade out, fade back in. When it's done fading back in, boom, it'll take us to the next page. Okay. Here's something. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a little, in our projects page, just like we did this Lorem Ipsum stuff, wouldn't it be nice if we had this little image that came up? Well, there is actually some stuff that they had that you could do with this. And there's an extension. So if I wanted to find a new extension, so go back to little extensions here. And I want to find something like Lorem, but I want to find like a Lorem Pixel. And there's something called Pixum. The Pixum extension. Let's load this Pixum extension in. It's kind of cool. If I click install for this one, then you can literally, the usage goes like this. I want to pick some building, pick some whatever I want. It'll be a bunch of little things you can find out. So take a look at this. So now that I've loaded this extension in, I can literally go to my projects page. Here's my projects page. And where we have that little card, because it's pretty ugly, right? Here's my little card. So where it says this image, right? I can go, okay, pick some. And I want to pick some building. pick some building. And so it'll go over, go to this site, pick some photos, ID, and it'll pick a random building, right? And I'll give it a class so it fits properly, equals to card dash image dot top. Oops. Just so that we're the same as this part. We don't care about alt right now. We don't have an alt, but we could have some kind of alternative text just for accessibility. But if we did this, now the card body will display this image, which will be 600 by 400. Let's try and do that. You can see now that we have a nice little image there, and it's some random image. If we don't like that building, we can try another one, right? We can say pick some, and we can look at building number 2. And then we'll say that building number 2 is 1081. So we can change that 1081. And like, what's that building look like? Right, so then it's that building, right? So kind of cool. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to have some kind of placeholder text, placeholder images, where we quickly want to scaffold out our page and not worry about content, because that's not our job. Our job is developers, right? We don't care about content. And actually, even for your client, you should tell them the same thing. You want me to build you a page? No problem. You want me to make content for you? That's a copywriter, right? You want to take pictures? Get a photographer. Right? Because that's their job. Their job is to have content. Now, reality is we kind of do everything. That's the reality. If someone really asks you to write some stuff down or whatever, if they've got something that they want you to concoct, come out of your head, I mean, you could do it. It may not be great, and if you're not a writer, but you can always find people to help you. So never turn down a job. Someone says, I want you to make a page and I want you to come up with the content and the images and everything. You're like, sure, I can do that. Let me get an estimate for you. Get a photographer, get yourself a copywriter, and they'll do all that stuff. And you say, this is what it's going to cost. The copywriting is going to be a separate thing than the website. It's going to cost this much money for the copywriting, right? It's going to cost this much money for the photography. We're going to take, bring a photographer in, get them to do an estimate. Maybe get a few people, not just one person, where you might want to work with the best price and talk to it. This can take a process. And by the way, even after you do all this stuff, you may not get the job. Because that's all that when you're kind of producing a quote. A lot of times what people do, especially small businesses, they don't give you a request for quote, a request for proposal. They don't do that. RFP is what it's called, right? They just kind of say, I want a website, and you maybe you know somebody, and you out of your goodness of your heart as a developer, you want to help them, right? And so you go and help your brother, sisters, cousins, uncle put together a website. And my recommendation is never do it, right? Because then you're there supporting them for life, for free, right? Because they're going to say, hey, Tom, can you come over and help me with my website again? And the answer is you're probably going to go because you're your cousin's sister's brother's uncle again, right? So always charge them like normal. That's my recommendation, because this is your job. If you're going to be a web developer, charge them right, which might mean you going, finding the the right resources to do a good job, because this might be something you want to show on as a portfolio piece. You don't want to do a shoddy job or a cheap job, because they're just paying you. So charge them like you normally would charge them. Think about it this way. I always think of it like this. If your cousin was a plumber and he had come and fix your house and do plumbing in your house, he's going to charge you, man. I don't know anybody who's not going to charge you for material and time, right? Even cheaper time, still going to charge you, right? And if you're not, you're at least going to make him dinner, right? Something. There's got to be some kind of compensation for his work. Don't take dinners either. Dinners are bad. All right. Anyway, so that's makes sense. So this picsum, it's also called Lorem Pixel. There's another thing called Lorem Pixel out there. So if I go Lorem Pixel, right? There is another placeholder image you can use up here. You can use Lorem Pixel, where you can grab some animals, and there's some examples here. The size of the image that you want. You can go to nature. As an example, I want my image to be a color image that is 640 by 480. Let's make it smaller. Let's make it like 370. This is kind of really cool. There's a bunch of sites like this. By 144, or you can actually type this in probably. If I want to say my image is 150 by 300, so kind of a rectangular kind of image. And if I click on color image for nature, right, this is the image that I want. And it's a nature image, then it'll actually, you can take this and it'll produce that image for you. Okay, that's what you want. Okay, so and this is what it does. Now it should actually generate the image. I'm not sure why it's not working, but maybe I'm just slow. But that's normally what we do, is just like literally generate the image for you. Oh, it's there. It's just not showing anymore. Maybe it's because I'm blocking it. Haha. I'm probably blocking images. But that's how it normally works. You just kind of go here and then, oh, there it is. And it'll show the image. So 300 by 150. Let's make it bigger. Right? And it's not kind of a weird size. Let's make it really big. And it'll take a moment to load because that's what it does. It kind of literally randomly generates this image. It's just my machine is not letting it do it. So if I say pop-ups and redirects, directs allow, right? And then reload, maybe I'll allow pop-ups and redirects. So nightlife, there we go. And then you can change the image size to whatever you want. And let's say I want people, like, you know, kind of a random, and that doesn't work, but. And so what it does is actually, it generates this stuff right here for you as well, and you can just like literally copy paste into your code. So there's a ton of ways, lots of stuff that does that. If you're using Visual Studio 2019 or 2017 and you're not using VS Code, sometimes Emmet or some of these tools aren't included, and you can use something called Zen Coding. Take a look at that. So Zen Coding is something you can get from the VS Marketplace, and it includes Emmet, it includes placeholder, a placeholder generator, right? So if you go to placeholder, that's another one, placeholder images, which does these. These are actually kind of cool too, placeholder, because again, you can just like say placeholder it, and here's how it would work. Whatever the placeholder image is and the size that you want, and it'll literally put in like this little square. So, and if you want to be really neutral, and you don't want to show your customers any kind of image at all, or give them any kind of impression, because once you put an image there, you know, a picture, you know, kind of is like 1,000 words kind of thing. So you don't want that. You want something like that looks like this, which is literally an image that tells you 150 by 150, and it's built in. So you can just literally say like via placeholder.com, and whatever the image is, you can specify one of these things. It'd be nice if we had something like this for VS Code, and I'm sure that there's an extension like that if I want to have placeholder. This is placeholder.com. Let's see if he does have that. Just curious. So if I look up placeholder, there's a ton of extensions. Yeah, look, there's placeholder image. Perfect. So I can actually do placeholder too. Let's see how this works. Yeah. So it's not as nice as the other one, because you have to type it in your header, and it would kind of enter it, right? So yeah, it's not quite as nice, but yeah, that would have been nice to have that. So let me just uninstall that. And I mean, that's how easy it is to install and uninstall stuff on here, right? And there's tons of other ones. Lorem Zombie, I'm sure there's ones that are in here that'll do a bunch of different kinds of stuff. Yeah, there's that. You'll actually do a little zombie story, right? You know, and stuff like that too. Okay. Let's go back to talking about jQuery again. So jQuery has several projects. So one of the ones we just talked about was the stuff that's built into jQuery, but you can always go back and use another project. And there's one here that's a little older. It's called jQuery Ui, okay, which is kind of cool. And we'll end with this. So if you want to try jQuery UI, you can. So what jQuery UI does is it gives you a bunch of, you know, things that you can use, like menus and progress bars and so on, that I want to inject. So for example, it gives you the code as well as everything else. Now, jQuery UI, it's a separate download. You need jQuery. It depends on jQuery. And let's see if jQuery UI, if I wanted to find something, instead of downloading it here, I don't want to download it here. Remember, I want to use Yarn, right, to add jQuery UI. So how do I do that? First, you can search it. You can say, hey, does Yarn have jQuery UI? Is that possible, right? And then, yeah, it does. So you can look at jQuery-UI for Yarn. And so it basically does, it actually adds in jQuery UI into your application. Let's do that. Let's Yarn add, right? So if I go back to here, we can go to our structure. So control backtick to bring up our little terminal window. And we can just do a Yarn add. We're going to use this as a development dependency, jQuery-UI, right? And let's see what it does for us. So it grabs the latest version, 1.21. There it is. I want to get code hinting for jQuery UI. Remember how we did code hinting? because I don't know how to use jQuery UI, let's say, right? And the way to get that is to say, hey, yarn, let's add at types. Let's see, maybe jQuery also, jQuery UI has types as well. So jQuery -UI, right? And then this one is a --dev dependency. So development dependency, not a project dependency. Let's see if we can do that. And then no, it says not found. So there isn't a UI, something for the jQuery UI stuff.
It works if you take it the hyphen.
Let's see. Yarn add at types jQuery UI --dev. Sure. Awesome. That's great. Thank you for that. So now this is good. And what it does for us is if you go to our package.json, right, again, it splits it off into dev dependencies. Well, that's, yeah. And dependencies. Dependencies means you need them. Dev dependencies means it's nice to have. That's what it's like, right? So now that we have this, we have to actually include it in our pages. This is where it's also bad. Think about all the other stuff we've done so far. So if I want to include jQuery UI in any of my pages, I have to go back to my index.html, and on the bottom where it says jQuery min.js, I need to include jQuery UI as another thing. So again, scripts, source, right? And I want to say .node modules / jQuery UI / and again, it would probably be, I'm just looking at the different options here. I'm thinking build, right? Build, and then it's going to be, no, not build. Gotta look it up, guys, because it's been a while since I used this one. Node modules, and then jQuery UI, and then let's see, there's test, maybe it's under UI. We want jQuery UI.min.js, that's what we want. But where is it? That's the actual UI itself. Is it under external? No. Oh yeah, these are all the different versions. It actually comes with every version that you want. So where would it be? Where would they put it? Maybe under demos? That's for each type of demo. But I want it all. So it comes with everything. This is like the kitchen sink when you download it. And that's not what I want. I just want the one file to do it all, right? Because otherwise, what's the point? So I don't know if you guys have found it yet, but tasks build. No, this is not it. And that's tests, and that's themes. Yeah, so this is cool. You can actually have a bunch of themes for jQuery. Also gives you that as well, but that is not what we're looking for in any way. Base, themes, tests. That's the library. And these are all the Bootstrap libraries. QUnit. Isn't that awesome? So they give you a bunch of tests and everything else here, but they don't give you jQuery UI, which is what we're looking for, right? That's terrible, guys. Like there should be a dist folder, and there isn't. Typically we have a distribution folder. I guess what they're looking for is each different type. If I want the accordion, I want to look at some of this stuff and see what it does. I wonder if they use the in here external require.js bootstrap. Where do they use? Oh, here's themes base all.css. But where is the accordion itself for the JavaScript parts? Because those are the two scripts they use: require.js, right? And then that's it. Wow. So that's pretty crazy. So require.js. Let me see if where that is. So let's go back to require.js. External. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, they messed up, these guys. So there's jQuery. They have every jQuery you can think of, but not. Here's require.js. So what does it give you? Oh, so what this is doing is it's using regular expressions to find. Wow, this is a massive file. So this is like the require.js library. No, we don't want this. Yeah, so it doesn't have it. Ha! Isn't that awesome? So that's pretty crappy, because I mean, really, what we want is we just want. I guess you just pick the one you want, right? So I want, let's say, for example, the some kind of widget or plugin or whatever, and I just use that one. But there's another way to get it. So let's just uninstall it. Hey, we haven't done uninstalling yet. This is great to uninstall. So let's get back out of here. I know I wanted to do it too, but it's not going to work. So there we go. So we're going to get rid of it. So the way to uninstall it is if I go Control backtick, I can just do yarn remove, right? I want to remove a library, right? So let's see. So again, go yarn remove. Notice it says I want to remove. So I want to remove something. It says remove is good. Not enough arguments. What do I want? I want yarn remove Jquery-ui, and that'll get rid of it. Yarn remove Jquery UI, and then we want to do the at types stuff, right? At types Jquery UI minus dev. There we go. And that'll kill it. So now what that's done is, if you go to your package.json file, it'll remove that stuff out of your package.json file and remove it out of node modules. So how do you do that instead? Well, there is a Jquery Ui Cdn that we can use. We haven't used CDNs yet, but you can use it this time. So like it says, here's my downloads, custom downloads. Here's my download builder. Thanks a lot. Here's my stable version, 1.12.1, right? And I want all this stuff, right? Here's my all this stuff. And then I can choose a theme. So if I can choose a, UI darkness, that kind of theme. And I can just click download and download it. That's pretty cool. Or I can look at CDN. So let's take a look and see if I can find a CDN. So Jquery Ui Cdn. Let's see if there's a CDN for this. Sure, there is. There must be. So all versions, here's the Jquery Cdn. There we go. So now what this is, it gives you anything you want. If I click base, let's go with base. So it gives you this CDN right here. This is the CDN. So this is the CSS for Jquery UI, right? And there's also minified. So if I click minified, so I can pick a theme, so the CSS, and I can click minified. Minified actually gives me this, which is a script that accesses the internet. That might be the way to go, right? So if I copy this one, and if I go back to my code, and I pop it into, let's say, my index.html, we'll put it there for now. And this would be after jQuery itself, so kind of in here. Okay, let's go back and try that again. Copy to clipboard, it says, and then, of course, it doesn't copy anything to clipboard. I love this stuff. It's amazing. You know what it is, right? It's me. It's my pop-up blocker that's preventing it from happening. Yeah. So did I miss something? No, I think we're good. Yeah, so this is the CDN for Jquery UI, and it's basically, it's grabbing the code. It's including jQuery. We already have jQuery downloaded, but we're just getting the UI from online, which is okay. And then what we can do is, if we want a theme for our stuff, we can put it up here. We can put it before our custom app.css. So again, it has the theme. We can get base. We can copy this, copy link address. And I can just, that link address is this is the UI. So I want to use that theme, and I can just do link rel. That's just a regular link. Yes. There we go. And that will be the link for our base. So we have our base, right? We can go to a URL for this. Yay. And then what we can do is, inside of our app.js, we want a special effect in our home, right? So let's go back now to our code. So I want to do, let's say we'll do a little progress bar. So that's this, and I want to view the source for this. Here's my progress bar right here. I want to show that source. So show this is how they do it. And you can see that we have our link, our style sheet, and look, it uses this jQuery function progress bar that's going to pop up, and with a value of 37. I mean, that's how simple it is. It literally needs to do this. So let's see if that works. I don't think we're going to get any code hinting, though. This is the problem with this. That's why I don't like it. So again, we'll say when we get to the home page, I want to put it somewhere. So I want to put a progress bar somewhere. So see if I get, see, I don't, yeah, no code hinting whatsoever. That's why it says any. Whenever you see anything like any like that, that's like saying, I got no code hinting for you. And we want to put it on something. I want to locate something somewhere and add a progress bar. All right. So again, maybe on the index.html page, I can have a section that's before the button. We call maybe a div tag with an ID of progress bar. And that is where it's going to appear, just like it would here in our page. So we need some kind of div. There it is. Look, a div with an ID of progress bar. So that's progress bar. And I want to go to my app.js and make sure it's spelled properly, because I spelled it progress bar with a capital B, which makes sense. And if we go back to our code now, finally, we should see a progress bar in here. Yeah, and there's 37%. It doesn't look very colorful because it is gray. If I don't like this color and I want to change it to a different theme, let's say a dark theme, again, I can go back up online. Bear with me, guys, one more minute, and then we'll be done. So I want to go back to where I was before, which is in here. Let's say, for example, I want kind of a, I don't know, I use Vader as a theme. There we go, copy my link address, and I'm going to replace my link address in my index.html with that theme. So we'll go into that, change this to this. And if I go back to my page, then you can see that that is a different progress bar. So you can change that in real time. So maybe every time I hover over my button, it increments that number, right? So again, we can go to my app.js. You can see that the value is 37. But what we want to do is we want to change the value if my progress bar itself, I want to change this value, you know, if I've hovered over it, if I hover over it, right? So if I say that, let's do what we just did before. If I say that, hey jQuery this. So when I do some kind of, oh, I need to curly brace there. What was that? Yeah. Oh, I know why. Sorry, this is incorrect. This is a property. It's a property of the progress bar, right? This thing here. And what I would do is I would assign this to a value, like let's progress bar be equal to this, right? Which means I would get some kind of variable. And let's just console that out for a second. Console out, console log, progress bar. Right, and that's only going to be available on in my home page. So let's take a look at that. So there we go. It's a progress bar with a length of 1, and we can see that we have all this stuff in alignment, title, and so on. And down in here, there's probably a value, because that's what we want. Because that's what it's modifying. It's got a value. So let's try that. So I'll say console log progress bar dot, let's see if that is true, dot value. I don't think it is. Let's see if that gives me an error or not. No, it's undefined. So we want to get access to this value and modify it so we can increase the value of the progress bar. And I'm sure on the website, it tells us how to get there. Sorry, which is, anyways, you get the idea. I'm not going to keep you guys away. I mean, to me, it's just an extra tool. So what people have done in the past, I'm looking at the wrong thing. What people have done in the past is they've used jQuery UI, right, in order for them to customize or create, little, kind of things here that they don't want to code themselves, and that they're common items that they've kind of used, and I want to change the value, and you can see that there's how they did it. Selector progress bar actually was right, but that is the value. I was right, var, and then what I want to do is with this value, that is the value, and I can increment that value, whatever the value is. Awesome. Cool. Okay. All right, so let's put this up on GitHub, and we will, there is no value. That is the value. So I'll put this up on GitHub now. So we'll say git dot long way, git commit -m. I'll say more jQuery functions. And then git push. Here we go. All right, guys. That's it for me for today. Next week we'll get into Ajax. Look out for that lab 2, which we're going to start this week.